Hello everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. My name is Isca Gonzalez. I'm an international talent acquisition consultant, and I'm also part of the LinkedIn Creators program in Spanish. Typically, for the people who's already following me, I share a lot of content regarding uh, talent attraction, human resources, and yeah, everything that is related with corporate and the workplace environment, I will say. And today is a special edition for the hiring revolution because I shared with some of you a few weeks ago that I'm very excited helping a wonderful project that we are going to have today. More details is something that I feel very, I would say, close to it. And I'm very happy to share with you guys what is about this Lyme Chronicles. It's a project of a very good friend of mine. And this project is about Lyme and associated diseases. So I think a lot of people, I would say all over the world, is not really aware of this disease. So I think it's going to be a good opportunity for all of us to know more about this, how the life of someone can change with this, right? Of course, as you know, this is a conversation. Thank you to all the people that is starting to join. We are streaming not only for LinkedIn, but we're also on Facebook and YouTube. And if you have any questions, please, of course, feel free to share with us and your comments. So I will welcome our guests, and I will just have a brief introduction. Just a second. Hello. Hi, so
Hello,
Jean.
hello, Isma.
Hi.
Hi. uh,
Hello. We prepare like a little intro that I think it's important to share. Typically in these sessions is like very, I would say, friendly corporate environment, but today is a special day because of this project. So the conversation today, it's I would say, about the journey that So and Jean are facing right now. They are on writing a book about the complex and sometimes, I would say, mysterious world of Lyme and associated diseases. I was telling you honestly, before I heard from them, I had no idea what this was. So this is the diseases that are transmitted, sorry, by tick bite. Jean is a Lyme survivor. He's, of course, a good friend of mine. I I think we met more than 10 years ago, but there's no need to share all the years, right? But when I met him, he was producing a documentary, very interesting in Mexico. It was called 5,000 Meters. This documentary is about a group of cancer patients that they were climbing the Iztaccíhuatl volcano, and today he's climbing his own mountain in trying to recover from this chronic illness. And so she's with us as well. It's his partner and caregiver. She's an accomplished editor working for a publisher in the United States as a copy editor. And she's also running her own editorial services business, Vocarium Author Services. So I'm very happy to have you guys here to talk about this um, topic that, as I said, I think not a lot of people is aware of. So
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you
we
for
can,
inviting us.
sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for
Go ahead.
inviting us.
Of course, I'm very happy to have you. This is important. I think when we met, we were talking about how it's important that these type of topics are there, right, in the media. So first, I would like you guys to remind us, Jean, you are from Mexico, and so where are you from?
I'm from the East Coast of the United States, from New Hampshire.
Nice. So I will start asking, like, how did you guys meet? Like myself, I'm married to a Bosnian guy. So I'm
Mhm.
always happy with multicultural couples and environments. So how did you guys meet?
So yeah, we met in the U.S. on the East Coast, actually in upstate New York, in the heart of the Catskill Mountains. There's a meditation retreat site, a beautiful place that we both had been visiting for a number of years. This time we happened to be visiting at the same time, and that's where we met. I was offering volunteer service, producing live events there, and Jean was offering service, doing, among many things, nature photography.
Okay. And then I think it's good to before we start talking about Lyme, I would just like to hear more about your, let's say, professional backgrounds, because at some point we were talking about this, right? Like how this type of disease literally changes your life. So before this happened, like what is your professional background? Both of you.
You want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Yeah, I was always a bookworm as a kid, always had my nose in a book. I went on to study literature in college, went on to work as a peer tutor, as a copy editor and a proofreader for a fine art printing company. Took a bit of a detour into printing for a few years, sometime, as I mentioned, producing live events. And yeah, now really back to my first love of working with the written word, as you mentioned, both as the copy editor for publisher, editorial projects. And now this project, Lyme Chronicles, which is, closest to my heart right now.
Nice. And you, Eugene, please let us know what your professional background is.
Ooh, well, I've done a lot of work in different creative fields, as you mentioned, the documentary production. I've also, in the past, owned a music studio and produced a lot of music, especially for pedagogic music for children education. And I also have a background in business. I ran a firm dealing with Mexican exports to Europe. And then, well, I also was doing a little bit of photography. That's when we met with Zoe. And now I'm coming back to life, coming back to work, because I had been on pause for basically throughout the COVID pandemic. I wasn't down because of COVID, but because of Lyme disease. And so it's been like 3 years since I was bitten, and kind of gradually had to stop doing everything. So now coming back to life, and with my first project being writing about my learning of Lyme and our common learning about Lyme, and putting it out there for others to learn about.
Yeah. How long you guys been together?
Been more than 4 years now, since 2018.
Nice. And as you said, well, of course, we can start talking about the situation, because I think if we hear from your background, you are and you were very active when you guys met. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good opportunity to start hearing the story of Jean as a Lyme survivor. So I think for a lot of people, it's important to know, like, how do you get sick, right? Like how this happened in your case.
Yeah.
Jean, how did you get sick?
So Lyme disease and other similar diseases are caused by bacterial and other pathogenic forms of life that are infecting your body through the bite of a tick. And it may seem like not a big deal, right? A tick is a little thing, bites you for a while. Sometimes it just gets off of you, sometimes you remove it. And you wouldn't suspect that this thing can change your life. That's perhaps its greatest danger, that you don't see it as a big problem, and many people do. What happened with me is I was aware of ticks. I knew I had to do checks, body checks every day, because in the area I was photographing in nature, we know there are ticks. It's, as they call it, an endemic area. So ticks are prevalent in the environment.
Mhm.
But even through my daily checks, I never saw a tick attached to my body. However, one day in July of 2018, 19, 19,
Mhm.
I found a redness in the back of my thigh. I thought it had been a
Mhm.
mosquito bite or something like that. It was an allergic reaction. But at the as months passed, I started developing random different symptoms like frailty in the knee, difficulty sleeping, muscle spasms, back pain, things that you wouldn't think are related to a bacterial infection. So they're isolated moments because these symptoms come and go, come and go. So it's hard to understand what's happening. A year went by, and then is when everything collapsed for me because I was in a state where I couldn't walk, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't think, I couldn't work. Uh, my heart started having a very irregular pulse, and so that's when I worried and I thought something needs to be done. I realized I may have been infected with the Lyme bacteria, Lyme causing bacteria, which is called Borrelia burgdorferi. I ran a test, it came back positive, and so I looked for doctors in Mexico that could treat me. Now this is difficult because in Mexico there is very few cases of and very few endemic cases of Lyme. Most patients in Mexico with Lyme are imported, people that traveled abroad and brought it back. And so very few physicians in Mexico know how to treat this. So I was looking. I began getting treated, but I soon realized from my research into the topic that the treatment I was going through wasn't enough. And that the moment I stopped that treatment, the disease could come back. So that's why I decided we need to get treated. I need to get treated in the place where they know best, which is the US, because the US East Coast in particular is suffering an enormous epidemic of Lyme disease and associated tick-borne illness. So I thought, there is where they know this best. They've dealt with it 40 years, and that there's where I want to be, by physicians that are experienced. Why do I say physicians that are experienced? Because everything we know today about how to treat and manage this illness has to do with how the patient responds to different types of therapies. There is no settled science and no known cure. You can manage it, you can learn to manage it, you can enter remission. So you can get to a point where there's no more symptoms. But some people, after some time and due to some traumatic effect in their lives, maybe a car crash or a divorce or just a period of time of high stress, that is enough to reactivate for some people the illness. And so this is still something that science and the medical science and doctors in their practice are trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
And so the best hopes right now for patients with Lyme, chronic Lyme, and I will clarify that in a moment, is to have someone with a lot of experience look at your whole panorama of symptoms and try to address it.
Mm-hmm.
I say chronic Lyme in difference to acute infection, which is the initial infection. In my case, I didn't have any acute symptoms at the start of the infection. But some people do develop fevers, headaches, rashes, very clear rashes that are considered the clear sign of Lyme, which is a bullseye rash. But not everybody gets that. But if you do get that, then you get concerned, you go to the doctor, you take 1, 2, 3, some doctors recommend 4 weeks of antibiotics, and then you're in very good chances of clearing the infection, because at that point, the bacteria is active, is metabolizing, it needs to eat, it needs to reproduce, and that's when you can kill it with antibiotics, because most antibiotics don't kill bacteria, but stop it from replicating. So there's where
So
you
so
can.
this
Yes.
Mhm. So this will be if you identify that you are ill, let's say quickly, right?
Yes. And nobody knows how long that lapse between infection and treatment will be most successful. But it's understood
Yeah.
that people that are treated quickly, and I would say within a week or two, but that's my opinion,
Okay. Okay.
can clear the infection with a few weeks of antibiotics.
Mhm. And then today, like, what, of course, with all these things you share with us, and I really appreciate that you are explaining this to us, because as I said, a lot of people is like completely unaware of this situation. Today, how's your routine? What are the highlights of your routine? Let's say when you are managing this illness after all
Yeah,
this period of time, right?
right. Well, 3 years after the infection, or at least the clear signs of infection, because it could have happened earlier. Um,
Mhm.
and 2 years after treatment, today I'm still taking antibiotics. I take a combination depending on the cycle because it changes every time, every week. But depending on the cycle I'm in, I take something between 4 and 6 types of antibiotics. Is my cocktail, and my yeah, and I take also some medication that is um, off-label, but it's a medication for anti-malaria, because some of the bugs are susceptible to the anti-malarian drugs. And I'm under medical supervision. I take about 40 pills a day, counting antibiotics, supplements, and some other meds to help regulate mood and sleep. Um, and as I say, I'm under medical supervision, and about every 6 months, sometimes every 3 months, I have to be
Mhm.
present for an in-person follow-up at the Lyme specialized clinic in the US, so that they can assess progress and see what's the next step. And I also have to
Mhm.
have regular blood tests to make sure my levels are okay, because things can go wrong anytime. So that's about it.
And
In terms of my daily routine is having a very healthy lifestyle, sleeping well, eating at proper hours, like pretty much living with a clockwork style routine. Otherwise, I get very out of whack and suffer the consequences later.
of course. And so how do you help or how do you support as a caregiver as well?
Well, maybe even I could just say going back from the very beginning. I remember when Gene was sick. I mean, at first he didn't know and I didn't know exactly what was happening. But after he was diagnosed, his tests were positive. It became really clear he had Lyme. From that point, we were calling each other. I was in upstate New York, still at the meditation retreat site, and Gene was grounded in Mexico during the COVID pandemic. So we were separated. And I remember we had been calling every week up until then, but once it became clear he was diagnosed, I was calling him every day, checking up on him. I was helping him to log his symptoms, just to try to keep track of what was happening, because it's this cascade of things that are going wrong. It can be easy to lose track. So I think every day we were logging, what kind of symptoms was he having? How was he doing? He was keeping me updated on his doctor's appointments, his scans, his tests, and
Yeah, and
then
if I may interject,
please.
that was incredibly important, because when you're so sick, you need someone by your side to help you steer course, to know where you're going, take one step at a time, don't go crazy, with what you should be doing. And when this happened to me, when I realized I was sick, I was isolated. I was living on my own in a remote location in Mexico, and there was hardly anybody to support. So it was through Zoe and our daily phone calls that I got that important support. And
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, and so we were separated at the time, and eventually, my time in the Catskills ended, and I did fly to Mexico to join Gene there. And yeah, I think by that point it was clear to him and also to me that he needed to get care with a specialist, with an expert in the States, someone who had treated a lot of patients, many years of experience. And so our focus really became getting him there, finding a way to raise funds and to get all the logistics together so that we could get him to the clinic in the States and get him starting treatment properly.
yeah. Because I think maybe that's also, I mean, I hope for the people who gets to see as well this testimony, like this type of illness, it has to be very expensive to manage, right? Like only to think about what you just shared, 40 pills a day, plus traveling, plus all of these things. I think, and I think at some point we mentioned that, like some people who might be aware of this disease, they tend to think it's like a sickness that someone that is rich can have. Because in a way, if I'm not mistaken, there's some people, like perhaps famous people,
right,
let's say in specific industries that have it, and they might
yeah,
share about it, but the pounds are like important.
it's such a complex disease that if you don't have very well trained doctors and specialists, and you've gone through all the layers of the medical healthcare system, you may not know that you're sick. Many of these celebrities that you
Yeah,
mentioned that are known to have Lyme disease got diagnosed after years of trying out everything. So how people with no resources can even get
yeah,
diagnosed, forget about being treated
yeah,
properly, because
yeah,
it's in a way it's an emerging disease. It's been around since the 80s. That the definition of the disease has been around since the 80s. But as you
mhm,
say, most people are not very aware of it, don't really understand it. That's for sure. Nobody understands disease
mhm,
unless you're right in the front lines, making the science, or you're a very involved patient in your health and you're learning all about it as much as you can. People don't really understand what's behind it. Because I'll tell you something. When people see me out in the street, I look totally fine. I look as a healthy person and go around. I have fun. I laugh. But then I come back home, and if I exerted myself a bit, then I'll be in bed the next day without being able to get out of the room or make a phone call. But that people don't see. Next time they see me in a month or two or whatever, they see me fine. But that's just because I was able to get out of the house that day. And so
yeah,
that leads to many people not understanding what is really happening. They say, but you're fine. Come on.
mhm,
Get well already. My brother writes me, says, get well already. What's going on? Oh, yeah, it's something you need to educate people about. And that's why we decided to write this book, because we realized
mhm,
no one in our lives really get what is happening to me. And it's so hard to explain because there's so much about it that needs to be digested before you can say, oh, okay, I get it. And we thought, well, how on earth are we going to explain everybody all these things in a way they can assimilate them? So
mhm,
that's why we took this approach to tell it from the human side of the story. And I don't
mhm,
mean only as the patient journey, because that's not all. There is the ecological aspect of it. There is of course, the medical aspect of it. There's also science controversies and science funding. There is an issue with insurers because insurance doesn't want to pay for these things. There is an issue. I mean, there's many issues. So we want to share about all these things from the actual people that are living through these things, and by talking
mhm,
about the human aspect of it, because everybody wants a friend. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody goes through disputes in their lives and challenges and moments of success, etc. So using those connecting strings that are what we care when we watch a film or we read a book, we connect with the characters by telling those stories, like gradually, as if you were reading some sort of I don't know, crime film where you have to, find out who the killer is, and gradually you're giving clues to the to the whole thing. Gradually share about the complexity of this thing, trying to make it available for people instead of giving them this information in a way that could seem repulsive. Because talking about ticks, it's repulsive. It's like, an ugly bug. And talking about sick people is repulsive. People that are healthy don't want to know much about it. And I understand. So we need to find a way to share it, because it's not just about me or the patients being going through this. It's about every one of us. The truth is, this epidemic of Lyme disease is Lyme and other tick-borne illnesses, tick-borne, illnesses. It's not going away. Year by year, this situation is becoming more and more grave, more urgent. And yet, we don't have the science. We don't have agreement between medical doctors about how to deal with it. As a society, we have a big challenge. The COVID pandemic, of course, took over our lives for the last 2 years, and now, thank God, appears to be fading away. While the Lyme and associated diseases pandemic is just growing and growing and growing, and you're talking about chronic illness. 20 to 10% of the people that get bitten by a tick won't heal from the normal course of antibiotics. In the United States, it's expected that approximately 500,000 people, give or take a few thousand, will get infected this year, of which 10 to 20% will not heal and will remain chronically ill for a long time. This is huge. And it's not just the United States, it's also Europe, many other regions of the world. And for instance, in Switzerland, which is one of the most regions with the biggest tick problem, they have been studying the tick populations, and they have made just recently a study where they present the increase of tick population over the last 10 years. And the information, the results are alarming. Ticks are everywhere, their populations are spreading, and their numbers are growing. And they also convey it is more prevalent, the type of parasites and pathogens that they're carrying. So the chance of getting infected is bigger and bigger every year. So just to finalize the idea, this book is our way to do our part, because we know this is a problem that can affect you, Iska, or any of our friends, or anybody.
Yeah.
If you don't have a friend today that's suffering from Lyme, chances are, unfortunately, that in the next 10 years, let's say, you're going to have to deal with that, even a relative or a friend or you yourself. And what are you going to do? And I'm not talking chronic illness, but definitely the chances of getting bitten by a tick are there, especially in places like where you live. The US East Coast has a huge problem with ticks. And so,
Yeah.
so that's why we're writing the book, to share all we've learned,
And I think,
not our voice, but from the voices of the experts and groups of patients and advocates that are trying to share about this.
yeah, and at some point, I think we were talking about this. So was saying, like, this is the book we wish we had when you got sick, right? Like to have this complete vision and information, which is that's why it's a very interesting project. And in this case, for all the people who doesn't know how is to write a book, because we also talk about it, right? Like if you think about writing a book, maybe you have the idea of someone typing in the computer and it's so nice with their coffee, and then they get it published and then they get rich with the book. But this is something very specific, and it requires a lot of research, like extra hands. So I think for people to know about this, because I share, of course, for example, my LinkedIn profile, that I'm very happy and willing to help you guys, because what we're looking for at this time with Lyme Chronicles is also volunteers. So first of all, like if you can share with us briefly, how are you founding all of these? Like, do you already have any type of sponsor or a publisher? How is it, this journey before the journey, the journey of starting to create a book?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And yeah, maybe I can just start by saying, yeah, it's definitely an ambitious project. As far as we know, there's not really a book like it out there. And yeah, kind of as Jean was saying, we didn't want it to just be our personal story. And we're not scientists, we're not doctors, we don't really have a leg to stand on to talk about complicated scientific topics or medical controversies. But what we can do, and what we resolve to do, is to go out and talk to the people who do have a leg to stand on, who do have something important to say about this. And we don't just want to talk to one or two people. We want to talk to dozens of people, hundreds of people, as many as we can, to paint a really broad picture, so that someone who didn't even think they were interested in Lyme disease, they can pick it up and really get absorbed in it. And through the human, heartwarming, touching stories of all these people, come away with a better understanding.
How are we funding that?
So how are we funding all this? Well, at this point, basically we're self-funded. We're funding it all ourselves at this point. We do look forward.
You just missed the point that we're not just researching the internet to make the book. We're actually traveling to talk to people around the world, especially in the United States, but also in other countries. Right now, we visited in Switzerland to talk with the scientists there. Now we're talking to scientists and doctors in France, and the journey goes on. So it is on top of having to work, on top of the day job, and on top of managing my illness, we're engaged in this crusade. And so it's a lot, and we have been financing it.
Well,
yeah,
and maybe
I think it will
just briefly,
maybe
to just mention, like, why is it that we think it's so important to actually travel to these places, meet these people in person, sit down with them and talk? Just that, because in this day and age, we can all jump on Zoom or, a live stream, just like we're doing right now, which is amazing. But we do find that there is something special about sitting down with somebody, maybe in their workplace, in their home, you're right there with them in person. There's something really special that happens when you take the effort and the time to go meet someone where they are. And so far, our interviewees have been so generous with their time and with inviting us to come to them and giving us hours of their time to talk. And we find that the conversations are incredibly special and exciting. And that's why we despite the fact that, it is expensive, it takes a lot of effort and time, but we find it's totally worth it. And that's why we want to continue in person as much as possible.
Yeah, of course. No, and I really appreciate that you shared this with us. I see that we have some people joining us live on LinkedIn and in YouTube. It would be nice if you guys can share where are you based. So if you knew about this illness, if you are already interested in helping and supporting, I think it's going to be part of our next question. So, of course, just to think about this, if you're making a specific research, talking with people, having hours of conversations that eventually are going to be part of this book, what is I will say, like, what are you offering and asking? Because we are looking for volunteers. We have, by the way, at the bottom of the screen, you can see that there's different ways, of course, to support this type of project. I think recently We had in the United States the nonprofit day. LinkedIn, for example, is already also supporting nonprofits with different types of products from the talent solutions perspective. And there's so many projects out there that at some point they need either funding or like volunteers that we're looking for. In our case,
Right.
there are so many ways for Lyme Chronicles, right? As a volunteer, you can share your story. Of course, you can become a donor, but specifically for the volunteering part, as I said, people think writing a book is just sitting by yourself creating your story. But why do we need hands, and what are you guys offering to people who's volunteering with Lyme Chronicles?
Right. Well, I'm happy to talk about volunteering opportunities because that's your area of expertise, talent, and involving people into things that matter, whether it may be participating in the efforts of a company or an NGO. We're an independent body, or self-financed. We will look for sponsors and eventually for a publisher that could help alleviate the cost of production, which I don't know, we'll get as far as we can by ourselves. The reason why we are offering a possibility to engage with the project for volunteers is because, as Zoe mentioned, we have already hours and hours and hours of interviews. And there's no way to write a book with that. So the first thing that needs to happen is these interviews need to be transcribed, cleaned up, analyzed, extract the points that are most relevant, make sure, well, know what holes are in the story that need to be asked as a follow-up. And etc. There's a lot of work that has to happen from the actual interview into digesting the information to be able to thread it into the book. And so that's something that is very time consuming. Right now, Zoe and I are concentrating in producing the interviews. And so there is an opportunity for volunteers working in the area of communications, whether it may be social media or journalism or actually literature writing, uh, to contribute in this area. There is also the area of managing our social media, because that's something that it's a little beyond our capacity right now. And so to be able to engage with the wider public and share what we're doing and how is it happening, etc., it'd be great to have someone on board to help us with that. Now, what are we offering the volunteers helping us? I would rephrase it and say, uh, we are offering the volunteering opportunity because this is a valuable endeavor. And we are all in search of doing something of our lives that has meaning beyond, making a living. So that's why volunteering opportunities are meaningful. They are not something for us to gain, but to give. And by giving, we learn and we feel empowered because we're strong, we can give, and we contribute to something worth it. So that's what I say we're offering. We're offering the opportunity to join this project and help us do it a success, the best book we can do. And that's a great cause to support. Now, of course, in the process, volunteers will gain experience, as in any internship situation. They'll gain experience, they'll acquire some level of track record. Um, they will be able to share about this in their resumes, etc. So they, of course, they're getting something. But I would say the focus should be on, if you have a sense that this is important and you would like to contribute to it, that's what you're getting. The opportunity.
And thank you for sharing. Go ahead. Sorry, the opportunity.
The opportunity to do that, to support.
Hmm. And I
Itself
really
is,
appreciate it because
yeah.
we have a delay. Sorry, guys.
So,
Uh, yeah, but I think this is when it becomes like a really good part of. You mentioned something. It's not just our way of living. Volunteering doesn't mean that you're going to, or unless you want to, right? It's not that you're going to leave everything behind and be dedicated 100% to this project. If you want to, that will be great. But we are looking for people
might
who
use
like to,
space here in the next
yeah,
session.
in the areas that Jean was mentioning, right? Social media, even like a project admin. So if you guys are interested in volunteering for this global project, because I think it's also something that we should mention, the work that you guys are doing, talking with people that it's involved from the different aspects of the Lyme disease, it's amazing. Like only the research part is very interesting. Definitely is going to provide like this experience, and I think, as we mentioned at the beginning, in a multicultural environment, in a moment where the workplace is also multicultural, in terms of skills, abilities, and experience working with this type of project, is something that you can help us and volunteer. So we are going to share for sure, like let's say the type of volunteers that we're looking for. You can see in our website. There's like social media. Of course, it's easy if you go to the website lymechronicles.online. And if you are interested, of course, in being part of this project as volunteers, you can send us a note, an email to talent@lymechronicles.com. I will be sharing as well in my LinkedIn
Just
profile. I think we all are going to share.
just a correction, Iska. The
Yep.
ad is limechronicles.org, O-R-G, because the .com unfortunately was already taken because a patient
Mm.
described her own experiences as Lyme Chronicles. So she took the .com. That's perfectly fine. We have limechronicles.org. So the email is talent@limechronicles.org or org.
Oh, okay. We are going to edit it. I will put it in the comments. But yeah, it's like we can do it right now. Talent@limechronicles.org, right?
Correct. Yes.
There you go. We solve the problem right now. So please send your note to talent@limechronicles.org. And I don't know, guys, if you would like to share like a final message for this special episode of the Hiring Revolution. I definitely appreciate your time. I know you guys are busy, but I think it was important for people to know about this. Thank you to the people who was joining us on LinkedIn. I hope you guys can also spread the word. Some final words from you guys that you would like to share with the audience.
Final words.
Well, I would just say, yeah, thank you so much if you're joining us live. Thank you so much for being here with us. And yeah, I would say Jean described a couple of roles like editorial assistant, social media manager, things like that. But if you're seeing this and you think it seems like a worthy project and you want to help us out and you're not quite sure how, just get in touch. We'll find a way, and we'd love to have you.
And from
Perfect.
me, the we have a newsletter. We have a
Oh, yeah,
newsletter
that's important.
in Substack. So if you go to substack.com and you look for Lyme Chronicles, you'll find our newsletter. I think the address is limechronicles.substack.com. That is a .com, because it's, and you can subscribe to our newsletter, share it, and help us by accompanying us by learning about our news and sharing them.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. As I shared, we're going to also leave like all the details in the comments of this post. You can always find this video as well on YouTube, Facebook, and we also are, for the people who's following us on LinkedIn, there's the Lyme Chronicles company site as well on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your time, guys. I'm very happy to be part of this project, and I know a lot of people is going to join as well because it's amazing what you're trying to do.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Iska.
Thank you. Have a great day.
See you
Bye.
soon.